Hello, this is Kate Stillman with Yoga Health Coaching, and I'm here with Tammy Astor, a yoga health coach, and her site is yogabrained.com. And Tammy's our go-to gal in yoga health coaching whenever we want to know what's going on with brain chemistry. She has a PhD in neuroscience or something there?
Cognitive psychology, neuroscience, yeah.
Cognitive psychology and neuroscience. So another yoga health coach, Sarah Rusnak, she asked a question on the forum, and it was triggered from this B.F. Skinner article, I guess. Extinction is the absence of a stimulus reward which weakens behavior. So that's a B.F. Skinner quote. Extinction is the absence of a rewarding stimulus which weakens behavior. Something we talk a lot about in yoga health coaching is this idea of trigger and habit and reward. Part of that's just great from a great book by Charles Duhigg on the power of habit. And this idea that when we're trying to change our habits, we want to be more aware of what the habit is, right? So that's the actual habit. And then what we're going to use to trigger it, whether it's a time, whether it's an emotion, whether it's doing something after you do something else. Like for my daughter, I have her scrape her tongue and then drink water. So that water habit is an after that, right? So that's all in the trigger category, the habit. And then this reward part. And that's where Sarah's really zooming in on is like, she says the people in her pilot program for yoga health coaching are baffled by the idea of reward. They need additional information in order to believe that this part of the process is of any use to them. And so you jumped in with some of your, what are some of your favorite resources? But let's just really talk about why reward works, if it does work, and what you found with this.
Well, I mean, I think that one of the interesting things about this, and you see this with child psychology too, when you're trying to get your kids to learn to do something, right, is that if there isn't an inherent motivation to do something, providing an extrinsic reward, some benefit for doing the habit, is how you start learning a positive association with it, right? And creating a habit is really about learning to associate particular behaviors together. And the research suggests that if there is no motivation or very low motivation, having some kind of extrinsic reward cultivates that link, that association between events that then will create the habit. So that's one of the key features with this, is creating that extrinsic reward. And often what you find is that after a while, that extrinsic reward becomes obsolete because this association is then created. You then don't need to have the extrinsic reward anymore. And the intrinsic value of doing the task, doing the habit, doing the activity takes over. Right.
It's like what I sense it as is like the intrinsic benefit, that long-term benefit, all of a sudden it's just in motion. Right. And so it's like if you want to say you're trying to meditate and you have some reward of like if you meditate every day in a row for 6 days, on the 7th you get a massage, right? And then if you miss a day, you don't get your massage on Sunday or whenever, right? And that's just like an adult version of it. And then soon after a while, you're not going to need the massage because you're going to crave the meditation for all the intrinsic effects. Yeah.
Right. And then, and that also kind of boils down to the brain science of it, right? When you first start learning a new habit, you have to pay a lot of attention, right? So the working memory component is there. And the easiest way that I explain that is when you start learning to drive, particularly if you're learning to drive like a shift stick, right? Yeah. You're thinking, my right foot's on the accelerator, it's got to move the clutch, my left foot doing the brakes, I got to look at this mirror, the speed, going 10 miles an hour, you got to shift up, shift down, and you're so cognitively engaged, right? Yeah. And then after a while, it becomes this automatic process where it becomes so automatic that you may even start down a route as if you're going to work and then actually discover that you've gone off in a completely wrong direction, because the first part of the journey was a familiar route to you and you intended to make that change, but the sort of automatization has taken over. And when you look at the way that develops in the brain, is that there's these brain cycles develop, it shifts from one area of the brain to another, so that it becomes this automatic habit, because we make thousands, tens of thousands of decisions every day. Right. And our brain can't handle making all of these decisions. Right. So that's why this automatization takes over.
Yeah, right. And so a lot of what we're doing in yoga health coaching is we're becoming super aware of what decisions we're making every day that are working for us, and what decisions we're making every day that they may have worked for us in the past. They may not have worked for us in the past, but we're definitely just no, it's got to go. right? And so we also know what we need to start to insert, whether it is that meditation practice, whether it's hydration, whether it's like one of the big ones for me is movement, right? Just like short bursts of movement every few hours that I'm like, I feel like I'm just in like exercise and then like stillness cycles, right? Where I'm like more still and then I'm like, I'm up and I'm moving. And it's like, and I really can't go more than 2 hours now without moving because it's such a great thing. But in the process of that changing the habits, when we do adopt an extrinsic reward, like if my buzzer goes off, it's been 2 hours, I got to go do 20 jumping jacks and a handstand and high kicks running in place for my 5 minutes, then like what do I get after? Or do I get my little bubbly water, which I love so much, right? Or like what is it? I find it's helpful. What have you found in terms of coaching and how this works with your students?
I mean, I've really tried to get people to dial into what works for them, right? So everybody has a different notion of what is rewarding to them. And for some people, doing exercise is incredibly appealing anyway, so they don't need that reward. But for others, it's an incredibly difficult thing. If they're very cuffer and they're very still and they're very grounded, this idea of getting up and moving. So I really try to get people to self-reflect because I feel that me saying, do this as a reward is less helpful than saying, pay attention. Like, what do you really want? If for you, like a massage is a huge reward, do that. If for you having 20 minutes reading a book with nobody disturbing you, then do it. One of the things that I found is this room that's my office was an old bedroom, and I cleaned out one of the walk-in wardrobes. It's not very big, and I've made that my meditation space. Because for me, it's this little place that I can go and I can shut the door. I can go into the closet. And for me, that's like, when I need my time off and I need a reward for like making it through things, I go and sit in front of my little altar in my cupboard, and that's my space. And I know that that's what's rewarding for me. Other times, it may be listening to loud music and dancing around the place. So I really try to get people to figure out what works for them.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting, a lot of people listening might be like, your meditation is your reward? Like, how does that happen? But that's really what starts to happen. Like, the healthier you get, the healthier, like, and the rewards we're choosing, like, I'm drinking bubbly water, you're sitting in your meditation closet, and experiencing, like, some, like, and for other people, they're getting some body work, right? Which is probably, like, really great for them and really great for the person working on them in terms of livelihood. Like, it ends up being that we start to reinforce our better habits with better rewards. So I was talking to a friend of mine who really struggles with working out and struggles with weight and likes to drink alcohol every night, right? And he knows the alcohol's leading to the weight and decreases his motivation for change and all that. And I was asking him about, when he's exercising, does he then, we were talking about heavier later dinners, and that's one of his patterns. And I was saying, when he's exercising, is he thinking about how he's going to be able to eat more at night? or is he like earning another glass of wine? And he's like, totally, right? And so that's where a reward is working against the habit. So why don't we talk about that for a minute?
I think that we have to, slow down and really start paying attention, right? And I think that one of the biggest key thing like that is to start noticing the way that happens, right? And I think for me, meditation has been the place where I start to see these habits or these links arising. I sit there and I find myself having these particular cognitive strategies. Like, if I make it through this, I can have coffee. Like, that's like that for me. Like, that's my bad addiction that I work with, right? Is caffeine. And so I find myself thinking, if I can get it through this and I can make it through this, I can go and get myself some coffee. And I don't even have it in the house anymore, So I think that giving yourself space to reflect, either through meditation or through journaling. I've recently, in the last couple of months, joined a group of women who we work with writing prompts around kind of Dharma themes of I'm becoming someone who, or what would my life be like if. And there's something about creating that space to either think or to write that allows some kind of subconscious, thoughts to come up and allows you to really start recognizing your links between things. And so maybe creating a habit rewards connection that's not related to each other. Because I think with food and drink and alcohol, they're often so related, right? It's this whole idea of, if I work out a little bit more, I can have that extra burger, I can have that extra glass of wine. And it should be, if I work out more, I'm going to sleep better, and trying to find those other connections that are not intimately connected or intimately related. And I think that feeds back into the fact that habits are so difficult to break, right? And that's why when we look at all these programs like CA, they're working with, in yogic terms, the samskaras, those sort of tracks in our brains, those strong neural connections, which is why we have to start really working on the reward and the cue, because they're the most accessible and that they are occurring in the frontal cortex, the prefrontal cortex, whereas the action cycle happens lower down. I mean, the prefrontal cortex is slightly involved, but the action is happening at the base of the spine, at the base of the skull, at the basal ganglia. And we want to really access what's going on up here and try and get into it a little bit more.
Yeah, right. And that's where the conversation went on the forum, right? It's like, what is it like to get a lot more conscious about what's going on in the prefrontal lobe with the trigger and the reward, because then we can set up a pattern. The more we can put that just into action and get that automated, the more it's going to show up. What I like about what you said too is that, if we really like taking my friend who he wants to lose the gut, and he would like to cut back on alcohol, and he'd like to just feel better as he's getting older. And we can look at that as an identity shift, right? So then instead of being the guy who likes to drink a lot of alcohol at night, and a few of whatever, instead of being the guy that has the paunch and is okay with that, right? Instead, it's like, no, what's shifting? So now are you the guy who likes to who enjoys working out? Are you the guy who enjoys eating a lighter dinner? Are you the guy who enjoys, just going for a walk and having, some hydrating beverages at night or something, something else? And who are you paying attention to, right? Other guys that are doing that same thing, right? Like, who are we following? Who are we bringing into our community, even if we're just watching them on the YouTube screen, right?
Exactly, right. And then I think that's one of the difficult things with that, is finding a community to support you, and it can be really tough if, your lifelong friends, your partners, the people you live with are all enablers, and that makes that shift so much harder. So often, in those first stages, you have to cultivate that support, because if you look at all the research on, social support and your social networks, that's the stuff that is what contributes to your long-term health. Whether you smoke and drink, those are bad things, but actually whether you're supported in your social network is the thing that's going to predict your longevity, right? And if you are trying to make those shifts to do those other health changes, those other, evolutionary, I am becoming somebody who, you really need to cultivate that support. And that's one of the difficulties, I think, with doing that if the people around you are not on board with that.
Right. Right. And I think that's what makes our program so effective with yoga health coaching, how it's like based on dynamic community. It's based on investing in yourself, being with other people that are really invested in transformation. And it's like, okay, we got to make this work, and creating that dynamic group structure. I mean, when I was just looking at the statistics for, we just posted them on the forum for like the feedback from working with a yoga health coach. And it's sort of insane. Like, the feedback is really sort of insane when it's like, wow, things really get better in a short period of time. For, by far and away, the majority of the people in the program. I mean, really, everyone in the program that's ever been with the yoga health coach is like, this is working for me. Right. And we see it's like, well, why? Well, it's like, it's not the information, right? Like, we have good information.
Everybody knows it.
But we all know it. It's like that. It's like just really getting us into the identity shift, and getting us hanging out with other people who are embodying it, and then those who are also on the path with it. It's yeah.
Right. And it's just committing to that.
Yeah. Well, great. This is fun. And I'd love to keep, doing some of these more yoga brain type questions with you. I think it's a great perspective.